Soul Melter EX is Kirby Star Allies' ultimate true arena, and it can provide a genuinely challenging experience despite the game's reputation for being very easy. I've beaten it with all copy abilities of Dream Friends a few times and find it to be absolutely fascinating, in addition to being fun, because of the different ability versus boss matchups. To an extent, there's no easiest or hardest boss. What is an easy, straightforward boss for one ability might be an absolute nightmare for another, based on the attributes of the boss and the strengths and weaknesses of the ability, such as range, damage, frame data, whether or not they have moves with invincibility, and, crucially, ability to hit bosses that float. A large number of bosses in this game tend to float at about mid-screen, so some abilities with very strong ground games but awkward aerial games can flounder in these situations. The relatively wide, varied movesets of each ability are different and interesting enough for me to have no problem fighting the same set of bosses over 30 times each. I'm going to go through every character's journey through Soul Melter EX and cover all of the weird and wacky little details of their matchup spreads, and then rank everyone together. Who will be the best? Will it be a Dream Friend? Yeah, obviously. Who will be the worst? The answer probably won't surprise you if you know a good amount about this game. Before we can get to talking about each ability in Dream Friend, all 38 of them, dang, I need to cover my bases. First of all, the rules that I followed for each run. In this game, you can scan an amiibo to get some extra health. Doing this will put a mark of shame on your run, and I will not be allowing it. Additionally, you have the option to have between 0 and 3 NPC partners. I will be doing every run solo. This might seem like it makes it harder. Bosses have more health the more partners you have, and the bots in this game are very stupid and require constant babysitting, so honestly, solo runs might be easier, or at least less of a headache. This solo run requirement does have one major effect. One of the big mechanics of this game is the ability to add elements to certain abilities or Dream Friends. With no partners, elements are totally off the table. For the vast majority of characters this applies to, this is not that big of a deal. For one particular heavyweight Dream Friend, this is that big of a deal, but we'll get to that in due time. The other thing I want to go over before I talk about each ability are the bosses, which is what this video is for. I will go into unnecessary levels of detail, because that's how I am, and will give little tips and pointers for particularly important parts of each fight. Despite the fact that I've beaten Soul Melter EX with all abilities and Dream Friends, I will be using a lot of footage of the Yo-Yo run for this analysis. Why? Spoiler warning for the eventual Yo-Yo ranking, but it's because Yo-Yo has such bad damage, it was the only ability that killed bosses slow enough to see most of their attacks. Way to go, Yo-Yo, at least you're good for something. And a little side note, a little addendum. Despite my best attempts at being pretty thorough, after looking at the wiki, apparently there were some attacks that I've simply just never seen before. Oops. So I don't have footage of these, I can't really comment on them. If even the slowest, weakest ability kills bosses too fast to see these attacks, then practically nothing will see them unless you're intentionally stalling. I want this to be my own analysis, so I don't want to consult the wiki too much, but when I glance at it and see there's an attack I didn't get footage of, I might mention it if it feels important enough. The first boss is Parallel Woods. This fight is particularly polarizing. Most abilities will make mincemeat of him with no difficulty, whereas some abilities will struggle mightily. Parallel Woods is one big DPS check. He is an enormous target that doesn't move very much, so any ability with half-decent DPS will be able to unload on him and kill him before he gets to do much. Any ability that can't, however, has to deal with what is genuinely one of the harder bosses in the arena. Additionally, Whispy is easily one of the most random bosses Soul Melter EX has to offer, with his projectiles landing and bouncing in unpredictable ways. This forces you to stay on your toes. Most other bosses are so predictable that they can be safely and consistently dealt with the same way every time, but Whispy has the tendency to put you in really awkward situations that you'll have to improv your way out of if you let him live long enough. Kirby with no ability, heretofore referred to as normal, has this as his nightmare matchup. Normal's inconsistent damage forces the fight to drag on, and its complete lack of unique defensive options means you have to skill diff your way through all of his chaotic attack patterns totally legit. Assuming you don't kill him in seconds flat, this fight is no joke. He'll start off the fight by dropping 4 bouncy apples, a bouncy Gordo, and a Blado, which will roll along the ground, all at random positions. The apples can be destroyed by attacking them, which can be helpful. He will then try to inhale you, and if he catches you, you will need to mash the control stick to escape while he chews on you. You usually want to stay right in Whispy's face to deal maximum damage while dodging most of his attacks, but the inhale attack punishes that. Staying high up will avoid this attack, but he inhales for an awkwardly long time. He will shoot some slightly tracking, pretty fast moving air puffs at you, then inhale again. He will drop some golden fruit which will explode after lying on the ground for a little while, leaving behind a lingering flame. If you have an ability that can extinguish fire, anything with water, wind, ice, or even paint, you can cool down the fruit and they will turn into healing items. He will drop a few regular enemies and some more bouncy Gordos, and fire more air puffs. He fires quite a large number of air puffs, so trying to block them will lead to a lot of chip damage. Trying to avoid them fully legitimately, though, can be a tall order with all the other stuff going on. At this point, his attack pattern will repeat. The vast majority of abilities will have changed phases long ago, but Normal is just struggling to stay alive at all. Normal particularly struggles with the random positioning of his bouncing projectiles, as a stray, unpredictably bouncy Gordo or Apple could easily block a shot of yours, completely forfeiting your one shot to deal damage to him for the next 10 seconds. After dealing enough damage, he will transition to phase 2, where he will jump to the middle of the street and grow in size. All bosses in this game take considerably less damage from attacks while changing phases, but Whispy has an additional quirk here. While he is growing in size, his bounding box, the thing that prevents you from walking through him, will immediately grow to his new max size. But his hurt box, the part that determines whether or not an attack landed, doesn't grow at all until the animation is fully done. This makes him deceptively hard to hit during the animation, as some projectiles will bonk against his eventual final size but not actually be able to reach where his damageable section is. This barely matters, I just think it's interesting. He will drop loads of apples on either side, which can be avoided by being right up next to him, really far away from him, or really high up. If you choose to stay high up, however, be careful, as when he's done dropping apples, he will drop some Blados, and they can spawn inside of you. As before, the Blados will roll away when they hit the ground. Whispy will then jump from one side to the other, before jumping back to the middle, while dropping some apples with each jump. The direction of the first jump is random, and his relatively quick movements combined with the chaos of the unpredictable, bouncy apples can make this a genuinely threatening attack. Additionally, Whispy stomping down to the ground cannot be avoided with invincibility at all. You really need to get out of the way. He will fire some air puffs that explode out radially, and it is possible that the trajectory will be able to hit you in the normally safe area right in front of him, so stay on your toes. He will drop some Komos, the little spider guys, and golden fruit, fire some air puffs, and jump again. At this point, he is out of unique attacks, at least I think, and, just like the first phase, most abilities will have already beaten him at least 20 seconds ago. Whispy is either a complete non-issue or a really bad matchup, with no in-between. The first of two mini-boss waves pits you up against Mr. Frosty and two floaties, two Anger Masters, and twin bonkers. These bosses and enemies are predictable and relatively slow, making this section particularly easy. Very weak abilities may struggle somewhat with twin bonkers, but other than that, this section is more of an opportunity to warm up than a genuine roadblock. Mr. Frosty will spawn on the right side of the screen, followed shortly by two floaties, floating the cell core if you want to be formal, in the top corners of the screen. The floaties will slowly move towards you and occasionally fire water projectiles that can be destroyed by attacking them. Mr. Frosty will do a slow triple jump towards you, with the final jump ending in a body slam that spawns in a big icicle in front of him. He will then try to body slam you 3 times in a row, with the last one spawning another icicle. He will shimmy to the corner, cobble together some snowballs or a snowman, and throw them at you. These snow projectiles can be destroyed in his hands before he even throws them, so they rarely get to even happen. Finally, he can run at you and eventually trip. Mr. Frosty is many things, such as goofy and cute, but he's certainly not difficult. With the floaties being easy to deal with and only one mini-boss on the field, this part is no sweat. The next section has you fight two Anger Masters, for some reason. These are two regular enemies that don't put up much of a fight at all. They will slowly walk forwards and throw slow-moving projectiles that can be destroyed by attacking them. They have masks that have a surprisingly high amount of health, but once those are broken off, they will die in one hit. If the masks are hit with fire, wind, or a sharp attack, they will instantly break, giving certain abilities a microscopic additional advantage here. If you break an Anger Master's mask while it is slightly off-screen, he will just kind of despawn. Neat. Not every part of Soul Melter EX needs to be extremely hard, but why is this section even in the ultimate super duper hard true arena? Like, what are these guys doing here? To round this section off, we have twin bonkers. The one on the right will always start with a spinning attack, moving towards you, and the one on the left will always start by throwing explosive coconuts. In addition to their opening moves, they can try to smash you with their hammer, jump to move around, do a fiery hammer flip attack, and use their hammers as pogo sticks, leaving a lingering fire hitbox each time they land. During the pogo attack, they have heavy damage reduction. These guys are generally pretty slow to move and attack, making them manageable. However, they're big, move independently, and can leave lingering hitboxes around in the form of coconuts and fire, giving these guys some genuine threat that the other opponents in this gauntlet lack. Everyone's favorite Kirby characters, Goldon and Silvox, are fought in an arena with 3 layers. They share a health bar, but invisibly have their own independent health. You can kill one and the other one will keep going. They will run across one of the layers, run off screen, then reappear somewhere else and do it again. Their children will also sometimes run along the screen, and they can be attacked or used as ammo, which is brutal. There are 3 holes at the top of the arena, and sometimes one of the little babies will pop out and wave from them. This indicates that a bomb is about to drop. The bomb can either be a fire or ice bomb, and deals contact damage as long as it's on screen. Eventually it will explode, leaving behind a lingering fire or ice hitbox. Dealing enough damage to the bomb will harmlessly destroy it, and hitting it with the appropriate element will instantly destroy it. After dealing enough damage to Goldon and Silvox, they will get knocked to the ground and begin changing phases. You can use this time to sneak in some extra damage. The arena will expand, now having 5 total layers, with a center pillar with wooden gates that prevent you from switching sides. The gates lift to allow Goldon and Silvox through, and you can destroy the gates to remove them permanently. Goldon and Silvox will now quickly run back and forth, dropping stars as they run. After this, the fight will now continue basically the same, except without the ceiling bombs and with more potential places Goldon and Silvox can spawn. They will also frequently do an attack where they enter the tower on one layer and reappear on another layer, with a bomb being shot out of where they entered from. They will always reappear on the layer you were on when they entered the tower, so this attack is very predictable and exploitable. Goldon and Silvox are unchanged from the base game story mode, except for an increase in health. Every other boss, barring the mini-bosses, are super tough, beefed-up versions of the regular selves, so Goldon and Silvox stand out as definitively the easiest bosses in Soul Melter EX. If you struggle with these guys, you're gonna have a real tough time with the rest of the arena. Parallel Twin Kracko, try saying that 3 times fast, will begin the fight by raising to the top of the screen and doing a heavy rain attack. Easy enough to avoid, but some abilities struggle at hitting bosses that float high in the air and thus can't do much here. Electric attacks will electrocute the rain and damage the boss. Dealing enough ice damage to the rain will eventually cause the water in Kracko itself to freeze, stunning it and causing it to crash down to the ground, where you can then safely beat the snot out of it. After the rain, each Kracko will go to the side of the screen, drop a Waddle Doo or Chili, and then swoop across the screen. They will follow this up with a lightning attack, where they attack the middle of the screen going out, the outside of the screen going in, and then one final big attack on the middle. Theoretically, after this they will go to the sides of the screen, drop some more enemies, and then use a rotating electric attack, but in all of my runs, even the abilities who struggled with this boss have finished this phase by now. Most abilities in Dream Friends were able to beat Parallel Twin Kracko around the lightning attack, as the rain attack gives you plenty of time to hit him. Parallel Twin Kracko has relatively low health, but that's because the real star of the show is up next. Parallel Big Kracko. This guy, as the name would imply, is real big, and he will take up very large portions of the screen at once. Despite his considerable girth, his contact damage hitbox is deceptively small, and you can slip inside him a little bit without getting hit, but I wouldn't press my luck. He will start at the middle of the screen, drop a Waddle Doo, then do a rotating electric attack that will take up the vast majority of the screen. Some more underprivileged abilities just have to wait in the corner for the move to end. Some better abilities can safely reach from the corner, and a few particularly cool abilities can stay up in his face the entire time and style on him. From here, he will alternate between swooping across the screen, dropping firebombs, doing the rotating electric attack, and doing a big lightning attack where he slides across the screen. His swoop attacks have him move quickly, so you can avoid them by rolling through him, and his various electric attacks are pretty telegraphed, so they can usually be avoided with good situational awareness and well-timed rolls. One of his swoop attacks has him swoop twice in quick succession, which can easily catch you off guard if you aren't familiar with his attack patterns. The most significant move he has in this phase is the Windy Lightning attack, where strong winds will blow, forcing you away from him, and thunderclouds will roll in from the background, shocking various parts of the stage. This is one of the trickier attacks in the whole game to dodge without invincibility move, and will deal lots of chip damage if you try to just hold block the whole time. I recommend staying at the far side of the screen and spot dodging when you see a cloud coming toward your position. This can be hard to gauge because of the way they curve into the playing field, but the one that moves the fastest is the one that hits the corner of the screen. Many abilities with good invincibility and or mobility moves get to completely ignore this section and embarrass Kracko the entire time. This boss fight is nothing special for most abilities, but abilities that struggle against floating bosses, Fighter in particular, can have difficulties hitting him safely and consistently because of how big his hitboxes are and how quickly he moves around. The second and final mini-boss rush consists of Chef Kawasaki and 4 Two-Faces, which is really confusing to say, Vividria and 2 Shield Guards, and Twin Bugsy. The first Miniboss Gauntlet was pretty simple, but this one does not mess around. The Shield Guards in the Vividria fight can pincer you and completely deprive you of space. And speaking of pincers, Twin Bugsy are no joke. Do not underestimate them just because they're a mini-boss. They're huge, move across the screen very quickly and independently, cover each other very well, and often can't be blocked because they can grab you. This is, considering what you have to dodge, one of the hardest fights in the entire game for abilities with more defensive games, and the only thing keeping Twin Bugsy from being in the top 3 hardest bosses are their relatively low health. So, starting off, we got Chef Kawasaki. Chef Kawasaki will spawn on the right side of the screen, and shortly after, 4 Two-Faces will spawn, with 2 on each side of the screen. Still confusing to say. The Two-Faces are normally intangible, but will become angry when approached, and will start to chase you at a decent speed. The chef himself can throw kitchenware at you, either while moving around the arena or in the corner. His projectiles can be destroyed by attacking them. He can also pull out a ladle and try to grab you, forcing you to mash out as he cooks you. This attack acts as a grab and can't be blocked, and has a hitbox the whole way, even as it returns to him and stops moving. Chef Kawasaki is a lot like Mr. Frosty in the first Miniboss Gauntlet. Adorable, funny, precious, and most of all, non-threatening. Up next is Vividria and the 2 Shield Guards. Vividria will spawn at the top middle of the screen, and the guards will spawn at the 2 bottom corners. The fight starts with Vividria floating above you and tracking you, and the guards, who are large and move relatively quickly, will rush towards you, completely suffocating you. One guard has a fire shield and the other has an ice shield. Hitting a shield with an appropriate element will instantly break it, otherwise these guys are supremely tanky for regular enemies. Unlike Mr. Frosty and the Floaties, or Chef Kawasaki and the Two-Faces, the guards do successfully make the mini-boss they're paired with significantly harder. Once they're taken out, the fight becomes easy, but the abilities with bad defensive games might take a hit due to the sheer lack of space. Vividria will start off by floating towards you for a few seconds, before spraying paint downwards in a large area. She can slash at you with some basic melee attacks, swoop down from the top corners of the screen, paint bombs, saw blades, or a little Kracko to fight you, all of which can be destroyed by attacking them, and create sculptures to swing or fling at you, which can also be destroyed but take more hits. This fight starts super stressful, but then becomes easy. Oh no, it's Twin Bugsy! One will spawn at each of the bottom corners, with the left one always immediately flying upwards and the right one always opening up by charging at you to grab you. I recommend starting on the far right side of the screen and using an invincibility move or rolling through him, as this will cause him to bonk into the wall immediately. The flying Bugsy will try to drop down on you, and from here, things get really chaotic. They can jump around and try to stomp you, charge back and forth on the ground or in the air to try to grab you, fly up into the air and dive bomb you to try to grab you, and most horrifyingly of all, release these cute little ladybug guys. They just kind of fly around. A single Bugsy isn't that hard, but it's still definitely the hardest mini-boss. 2 Bugsies that move independently? Good luck. Very large swaths of the screen can become unsafe at a moment's notice with their fast movements and big bodies. These guys are almost never such a big threat that they might end your run, but they excel at whittling down your health, pressuring you to eat into your limited supply of healing items. Francisca is the first Mage-Sister you fight, and it's generally not that hard, with most of her attacks being pretty telegraphed. Her super attacks are pretty knowledge-checky, though, as they can easily catch you off guard if you don't know how they work. The fight begins with Francisca's axe growing into a massive snowflake, then chasing after you for a considerably long time. If the axe touches you, it will grab you, meaning it can't be blocked, and you'll be stuck to it until the end of the attack. The axe can be tricky to dodge, but it also has very heavy momentum, so getting far away from it can give you a large amount of time to safely attack Francisca, who floats in place during this attack. Once the attack is done, Francisca will turn the axe back to normal and swing it in the middle of the screen, dealing huge damage and launching you if you are grabbed. Don't underestimate this first attack. Even if you know what to expect, it has a tendency to last just a bit longer than you expect, so getting greedy and going in for more attacks might lead to you getting grabbed and getting embarrassed in the process. Attacking the axe with enough fire damage will melt the ice off of it and cancel the attack early. This can easily give you less overall time to hit Francisca, so it probably isn't the play, but it's cool looking. She will do some dash attacks, sometimes doing multiple dash attacks in quick succession, which can catch you off guard, and upwards combo attacks across the screen, and will follow up by dragging her axe across the ground, covering it in lingering icicle hitboxes. Francisca has a tendency to reposition a lot and cover a lot of ground while she attacks, so being in the middle of the screen is dangerous. The corner is your friend, as her attacks will basically never hit there. Once enough damage is dealt, she will change phases and will initiate her super attack. She will float to the top middle of the screen and start throwing down icicles that will freeze the ground when they land. She will throw them right to left to right, left to right, right to left, and finally, both left and right at the same time, with the icicles suddenly going very far to the sides of her at first. This is noteworthy, as these areas of the screen are otherwise completely safe during this attack. When the final set is thrown, they will go so far outwards that the ground in the middle of the screen is safe. Knowing the pattern of the icicles can let you attack her safely during this very lengthy attack. That being said, some abilities don't have the range, safety, or mobility to feasibly attack her during this move, so you can just safely cower in the corner like a little baby if you need to. Hitting the icicles with a fire attack will not only nullify them, but will also produce a healing item. She will do some more basic attacks around the screen, and then eventually move to a side of the screen and start firing the soda gun. This essentially acts as a big ricocheting laser beam that will take up most of the screen. She will change its angle as she fires, changing which parts of the screen are unsafe. After firing it for a little bit, she will move to the other side of the screen and continue firing. This attack has huge coverage, but is telegraphed, and she's a sitting duck while doing it. Francisca has some tricky stuff, like the axe snowflake attack, dash attacking multiple times in a row, the icicle throwing attack, but once you know her pattern and aren't surprised by her curveballs, she becomes pretty reasonable. Flamberge, the next Mage-Sister, is like Francisca in that she is relatively easy but will punish you with dumb stray hits if you don't know her movement patterns. Camping in the corner is a very effective way to stay safe against the Mage-Sisters, but Flamberge tends to suddenly hop into the corner as she repositions herself, which is a ticket to free contact damage unless you see it coming. To start, Flamberge will move to the left side of the screen, plunge her sword in the ground, and move to the right, lighting the ground on fire. The corners are safe during this attack, and being in the left corner will allow you to safely beat her up for a few seconds, unless you are a big character. If you're big, her bobbing up and down will eventually bump into you. She'll move to the right side of the screen, but not before hopping to the left a little bit, so watch out. After this, she'll swing her sword a few times before transitioning into a rapid jab that finishes with a fireball launching finale. The fireballs can be nullified by attacking them. She's kind of a sitting duck during this attack, so you should be able to hit her enough to move to the next phase right about now. Just like Francisca, the start of a new phase means she does her super attack. Flamberge will float up, extend her sword, and repeatedly try to skewer you. I recommend slide kicking back and forth to dodge this one, but if your ability has good enough invincibility moves, you can instead be gutsy and try to attack her. She will then fling out some flaming rocks as projectiles. If you were skewered, she'll throw you too, dealing huge damage. The rocks will linger as hitboxes on the ground. They will disappear after a little bit, but can be attacked a few times to destroy them faster. After one more rapid jab attack, she will move to the top middle of the screen and throw down 3 swords on each side, creating big fire geysers. Directly underneath her is safe, so this is a great opportunity to get in free damage. Abilities that struggle against floating enemies really flail around here though, as she floats pretty high up. As her final unique attack, that is reasonable to see, she will hop up to the top right corner, slash to rain down fireballs, then do it again in the top left corner. She can apparently use that huge fire cannon attack that she does in the story mode, but in all of my runs, even with the worst of copy abilities, she never lived long enough to do it. On the whole, as long as you're aware of her tendency to hop around before repositioning and can avoid silly contact damage, this fight isn't that much of a problem. Even though Zan is the last Mage-Sister you fight, she's definitely the easiest if you know how to dodge her attacks. She has very threatening-looking attacks that cover particularly large areas of the screen, but she massively handicaps herself by giving you plenty of time to safely attack her at the beginning of both phases. Now that I think about it, all the Mage-Sisters shot up with an attack that gives you plenty of time to hit them, but of those, only Francisca's attack actually feels difficult to dodge. Zan will move to the left side of the screen and start to summon thunderclouds. She'll move to the right and unleash huge blasts of lightning on either side of her, big enough to cover most of the screen. However, directly underneath her is safe. On paper, this attack is very threatening just because of how huge it is. In practice, you just stay directly underneath her, beat her up for several seconds straight, and then move on to the next phase. If you haven't changed phases yet, she will then start hopping up and stabbing the ground, creating big lightning explosions as she does. In Phase 2, it's super attack time. Oh yeah, classic Mage-Sister stuff. Zan will equip Thunder Drums, then move to the left side of the screen to start blasting arcing lightning ball projectiles all over the screen. Good news, directly underneath her is safe, and you have a long time to hit her. Bad news, she will eventually move over to the right side of the screen and continue firing, which puts you in an absolutely awful position if you're still in the left corner. Getting over to the right is easy and safe if you have a good invincibility move, but if you don't, you'll need to have a good sense of when she'll move and start booking it in advance to avoid getting drowned in balls, as the run from the far left to the far right of the screen takes a few seconds. After firing some more volleys, she will finish off with one final big shot that creates a big shock explosion in the middle of the screen. At this point, she is likely dead because of how much time you had to attack her. If not, she will do a rapid jab attack that moves her a good distance across the screen, followed up by a long-range poke that she can do in the opposite direction if you're behind her. You can stay in the corner right behind her to stay safe, but she backs up a lot while readying this move, so block to avoid contact damage. This will be followed up with some regular slashes, but she should really be just about done by now. Just like Flamberge, she apparently can do another big screen-filling super attack, a huge electric beam in her case, but will always be defeated before she gets to do it as long as you don't fall asleep mid-battle. If they put these attacks earlier in their attack pattern or gave them some more health, each of the Mage-Sisters could put up a serious fight, but as they stand now, they just leave themselves vulnerable for so long they barely get to do anything. Side note, if you have an ability with water or paint-based attacks, dealing enough wet damage to her during the Thunder Drums attack will cause her drums to break and will stun her. She'll be very, very dead after this. Parallel Meta Knight is small, nimble, can block your attacks, and is overall unpredictable. This can make him pretty tricky for punishable, unsafe abilities, but he generally pales in comparison to a future boss, Morpho Knight. Similar to Zan, he will give you a very long opportunity to hit him later in the fight, which makes him much easier. Other bosses in Soul Melter that have stun phases had their vulnerability time significantly decreased compared to their base game counterparts, so I genuinely wonder why Parallel Meta Knight here didn't get the same treatment. After descending from his platform to fight you, Meta Knight is pretty unpredictable. He will generally play footsies with you, trying to stay close but not too close, and he will periodically throw out an attack. While not attacking, he has a high chance of blocking any attacks that you land on him. He also has a unique quirk that is pretty annoying. Characters with swords, like the sword ability in Dark Meta Knight, will clank if their attacks meet the boss's attacks. This just results in a lot of your attacks being cancelled, and it kinda sucks. Anyways, when Meta Knight is in footsies phase, he can, in addition to moving and jumping around to reposition, suddenly dash towards you and strike, do a multi-slash sword combo, wind up and do 3 slashes that send out 3 projectiles, do a rapid jab that ends at him sending out 1 projectile, prepare a counter-attack where he will do a long-range retaliatory slash if you hit him, jump up and fire 3 projectiles at you, jump and descend with a spinning slash, jump up and glide towards you, jump up and try to hit you with a descending sword slam, and charge up before dashing forwards with an upward slash and final smashing you if you get caught. That is a lot of attacks. He can also apparently do an unblockable tornado attack too, but the first phase practically never lasts long enough for that to come into play. After dealing enough damage, Meta Knight will fly off screen, then reappear at the top middle of the screen. During these animations, he takes full damage, so get in your hits while you can. He will then split into multiple copies of himself, with significant damage reduction during this animation. I don't like that. Seeing as I'm doing all these runs solo, he will always split in 2, but with more team members he can create more clones, with up to 4 Meta Knights possible. Super unimportant side note, I've never seen this fight with 3 Meta Knights. You'd pretty much always fight this guy, and every boss for that matter, with either one person or a full team, so seeing 3 Meta Knights would involve having a cursed, unnatural team composition. They will both fire some projectiles downwards, then each move to a bottom corner. They will fire a dark energy ball and try to grab you. If you get grabbed, you'll need to mash out. During this attack, you can hide behind one of them to completely negate one of the attacks while dealing consistent damage. The single energy ball that gets sent your way can be air dodged or jumped over. From here, Phase 2 is just Phase 1 but with 2 Meta Knights instead. This can be very difficult for abilities with slow, punishable moves, as having 2 independently moving, unpredictable jerks flailing around the screen makes this a very hectic phase. However, the moment Phase 1 ends, Meta Knight is put on a timer. After a little bit of Phase 2, both Knights will eventually fly into the background, reappear at the top of the screen, and then drop a bunch of rocks into the playing field. They will then slam down onto the pile of rocks, creating some rubble as lingering hitboxes. If you destroy a pile before they slam down onto it, they will slam their sword to the ground and then get stuck in place for entirely too long. For all intents and purposes, this is the kill screen. They give you so much time to hit them that the fight always ends here. As mentioned earlier, I'm surprised that they didn't go one of 2 ways to make this fight harder. Either shorten his vulnerable period, or have it so that if you only break 1 rock pile, which is what will usually happen as most abilities don't have the time or power to break both, have the other knight reappear and start attacking you while the first one is stuck. As it stands, even abilities that struggle with this fight have the option to run away and stall out most of Phase 2, wait for rock phase, and then just win. If your ability is so weak that it can't kill him during rock phase, or you just decide to show mercy for some reason, the clones will rejoin and form a single Meta Knight immediately after. I guess they really just didn't want this fight to be that hard. This fight had the potential to be one of the hardest in the game with 2 independently moving, randomly attacking threats, but Meta Knight really dropped the rock this time.
Boo! You stink!
Parallel Dedede is a huge noob killer. The fight is filled with attacks that are surprising and difficult to dodge the first time you see them, but after you get a grip on his attack patterns, he becomes extremely predictable and exploitable. This leads to him being one of the easier bosses overall. However, a few abilities and characters with poor range and defensive capabilities can find him really hard, as he moves around a lot and throws around big hitboxes everywhere. Dedede will open up by running at you and doing 2 dash attacks. These launch him very far, very suddenly, which can catch you off guard. Speaking of catching you off guard, he will now run up to you and try to inhale you. If you expect a 3rd dash attack to try to dodge that, you will get punished by the surprise inhale. If you know about it, you can just jump behind him and get in a bunch of free damage. He will then jump 3 times, each jump producing tall, quickly moving shockwaves. Because of the shockwaves, it's generally safest to be directly underneath right where he lands. Except, don't get hit by him. Roll, spot dodge, or ideally, use an invincibility move near where he lands. Dedede will then waddle up to you and try to smack you with his hammer. This attack is slow and has bad range, but if you're in the air when he tries to initiate it, he will jump and release a big shockwave when he hits the ground, so just bait out the attack without leaving the ground. He'll jump into the corner, producing another shockwave to start launching bouncing Gordos at various angles. The first few will miss you if you're close up, so this is another good time to beat him up safely. The last one will bounce at a very steep angle, keeping it close to him, and you'll follow up with another running inhale, so don't get too carried away and be prepared to dip at a moment's notice. A few more dash attacks, an inhale, and some more jumps later, he can do an attack where he'll puff up and awkwardly float at you. Unless your ability's damage is really bad, or you've been really cautious and haven't been hitting him that much, you should probably change phases before you get that far. Dedede will now activate Funny Mode. Side note, I'm so used to seeing him in his buff form that I never really noticed that this is supposed to be a joke. I mean, obviously him being buff is funny, but the joke is you only see his upper body in the transformation animation, so the reveal that he still has his stubby little penguin feet and didn't get any taller is a little gag that the marketing of this game spoiled. I'm really bad with tangents. I talk about a lot of things. Anyways, Dedede will activate Funny Mode, hop to the side, and smash the floor, transitioning into a larger arena. Before and during the hop, Dedede takes full damage, but after he reaches the middle of the screen, he will have strong damage reduction until the next phase starts. Dedede will do a huge jump, creating multiple sets of shockwaves that move at different speeds. After this, he will immediately jump away, so spot dodging in place is a good way to dodge this move. He'll start tossing rotten fruit and Gordos at you, and you can easily get behind him and wail on him for a little bit. If you have an attack with a water element, you could wash off the fruit and get some healing items. After this, he will start punching at you, moving a far distance with each punch. He can turn around after every 2 punches, so a safe way for every ability to dodge him is dodge behind him, he goes punch punch, dodge behind him, he goes punch punch, dodge behind him again, he goes punch punch, slam slam. The final slam will produce a rock chunk from the ground, which acts as a lingering hitbox. If your ability has an invincibility move, moving through him repeatedly will keep you safe while doing good damage. You can dodge this move by flying near the top of the screen. That is not recommended, as he will immediately follow up with 3 huge jumps. After jumping, he will jump again, but differently this time. He'll bounce from one side of the screen to the other, with the final bounce releasing more shockwaves. After this is another punch combo, and, according to the wiki, an attack where he jumps from wall to wall before landing in the middle with some shockwaves, but I've never seen that attack in my entire life. The fight should be over a good while before he gets to this point. Parallel Dedede is a lot like a punch-out boxer. Big, strong, dumb, and predictable. He will clobber you to the curb if you get caught off guard by his Phase 1 mix-ups or his enormous Phase 2 hitboxes. Now once you know his tricks, you'll make him look like a complete idiot while you take him down. Corrupt Hyness is a real son of a gun. He floats, moves around a lot, has a relatively skinny frame, and, in his later phases, litters the battlefield with lingering hitboxes. Many abilities have serious trouble hitting this guy safely, and some abilities that rely on multi-hitting dash attacks, such as Wing, aren't able to deal very much damage at a time because of how skinny he is. He can render entire portions of the screen uninhabitable for good lengths of time, and some abilities are just entirely unable to hit him during these times, forcing the fight to go on longer, which gives you more time to slip up and get hit. Hyness is easily one of the hardest fights in the game, and he's one of the most common bosses for an ability to have a bad matchup against. Hyness will open the fight by throwing a bunch of lightly homing dark projectiles that can be destroyed by attacking them. These aren't that threatening in a vacuum, but him floating pretty high in the air and constantly moving from one side of the screen to the other means that a lot of abilities are struggling to hit him at all, let alone hit him and not also die to a dozen projectiles. He will spawn in a bunch of needles that can also be destroyed by attacking them, and completely cover the middle and then edge of the screen in needles. Most abilities won't have to see the needle attack. Once you deal enough damage, he will move to the middle of the screen and start his big elemental attack. He will call down 2 enormous lightning bolts to the middle of the screen and send electric projectiles along the ground. He will then summon massive fire geysers that cover the edges of the screen. Finishing it off, he will spawn an icy wind across the entire screen minus the top 2 corners. He gives you a good amount of time to hit him during the fire geyser attack. After this, he'll start throwing big honkin' balls at you and eventually spawn more needles. the phase should probably be done by now, unless you're Yo-Yo. If you'll pardon my turn of phrase, once phase 2 starts, all heck breaks loose. Hyness will summon the Three Mage-Sisters, sort of, and the real fight will begin. The Three Mage-Sisters will rotate around him, acting as extra hitboxes you have to dodge, and they can potentially block projectiles. He'll grab a random Mage-Sister and start swinging them at you like a baseball bat. For the first two, he will do one swing and then slam them into the ground. For the final one, he will do two swings instead. Each of the sisters has a different effect when slammed. Flamberge will create unblockable fire geysers in front of and behind her. I mean, the fire geysers in phase 1 were also unblockable, but considering that there's more stuff going on here, it's more relevant. Francisca will create two areas of icy wind in front of and behind her. Zan will create big electric projectiles that run along the ground. This particular section of the fight is one of the most cluttered, uncomfortable to navigate parts of any boss fight in the game, and in a way that's a bit different each time, so it's always stressful. The order he uses the sisters in is random, and where he will leave the hitboxes in the ground is based on where he was when he started the attack, so there's a lot of unpredictability to this phase, even though he technically always does the same attacks. Once a Mage-Sister has been wedged into the ground, it has a hitbox until Hyness picks it up. With parts of the ground being blocked off by the sisters, him floating at about short hop height to prevent you from easily jumping over them, the other sisters still rotating around him swinging at you, and the massive hitboxes the slam attacks have urging you to get out of there quickly, this is a very hectic and suffocating lineup of attacks. Abilities with poor or non-existent defensive games like Bomb are suffering right now. Once he has thrown all of the sisters, he will call them back to his side. If you deal enough damage to change phases before he has thrown all of them, he will be forced to call them back before starting his next attack. He has no damage resistance during this animation, so you can deal some heavy damage. Otherwise, he will float to a side of the screen, spawn an icy wind over most of the screen, and do another huge lightning bolt attack before moving to the other side and doing it again. This attack isn't too hard to dodge if you know what's coming, but getting caught in a bad place will lead to big damage. Many abilities are completely unable to damage Hyness during this attack, dragging on the fight even longer. After this, he will start to throw the sisters at you, with them creating damaging crystals around themselves when they hit the ground. At this point, he should be just about ready to go to the final phase. He will move to the middle of the screen and form a friend circle. He will quickly roll all around the screen, making him hard to dodge, except for the fact that you can just hide in the corner and he can't hit you at all. Oops. He can be very hard to hit during this phase, as only he, not the sisters, has a hurt box, and the circle rotates quickly, so you just kind of have to throw out attacks and hope it works. After a good amount of rolling, he will move back to the middle of the screen and shoot out the Mage-Sister towards the corners and middle of the screen, creating damaging crystals around them. At this point, he will be stunned and vulnerable, but not for very long, and the lingering hitboxes of the sisters and the crystals can make it very awkward for abilities with bad range to get in a good amount of damage. Ideally, he'll be finished off here, but if not, he will start a shield phase. He will hide behind the sisters as a shield, float around the screen, and occasionally peek his head out to toss out more dark projectiles. He can only be damaged when he peeks out, and if you deal enough damage, you'll break the shield, stunning him and spawning in a baby bottle as a healing item, which is just kinda neat, a little weird. At this point, he should really, seriously be dead. Hyness is a relatively difficult fight just in terms of the things you have to dodge and the damage his attacks deal, but when you factor in that like half of the abilities in the game are really bad at hitting things in the air for some reason, in a game where most of the hard bosses float, this floating, constantly moving jerk puts up a serious, brutal slog of a fight. The Three Mage-Sisters have a very chaotic, intimidating-looking fight, but is predictable, so much of the fight ends up consistent, with the exception of a few difficulty spikes. Only two of the Mage-Sisters will usually be active at any given time, and they tend to hang out and attack near the middle of the screen. Camping the corner is recommended unless your chosen character has enough invincibility to comfortably stay in the line of fire. There'll be a lot of hitboxes flying around, and the sisters will often combo you into each other, dealing loads of damage in the process, so play it slow and safe if you need to. The most important things to know for this fight are which attacks can hit you in the corner, and thus when you need to use a defensive option to get out of the way. Notable examples include Flamberge hopping into the corner as she moves away, or Zan backing up into you as she readies her multi-hit attack. Characters with poor range really struggle in this fight, as you will have a much harder time hitting them from the corner. Despite each of the Mage-Sisters having the ability to float, they tend to stick to the ground more often than not in this fight. Because of this, abilities that had a tough time with the Mage-Sisters individually might have a surprisingly good matchup against them together. Because of just how much stuff is going on, I'll only highlight some key attacks instead of trying to describe every sword swing in detail, which is usually how I like to do it, but, you know, it wouldn't make any sense here. Very early on, Francisca will do her Snowflake Axe attack, where the axe homes in on you and tries to grab you. This version of the attack lasts for a much shorter amount of time, so jumping a bit from the opposite corner will easily avoid it. Like with Zan's own fight, her wind up into rapid poke attack has her back up into the corner, so don't let her get you with that. In general, they'll use attacks that are significantly less threatening than the attacks they do in their individual fights, so just keep poking from the corner until you get to phase 2. In true Mage-Sister fashion, phase 2 begins with each of them doing a super attack. Flamberge will activate her giant fire cannon along the ground, Zan will activate her giant lightning blast along the top of the screen, and Francisca will use her soda gun to hit pretty much everywhere. When you know what's coming, this attack isn't too hard to dodge. Go up to avoid the first part, quickly go down as soon as Flamberge is done to avoid Zan's attack, and Francisca's attack is easily dodged by going to the corner, which you want to be in anyway, so she's basically a non-issue. Getting hit by the first part will combo you into the other parts, which is basically instant death, so, you know, no pressure. I recommend staying near the left side of the screen, as that will put you in a better spot for their future attack patterns. An aside, in the other fights where Flamberge does her fire cannon thing, you can safely hide behind her to avoid the attack while getting to hit her. This version of the attack, which looks like the other versions, has her take so much recoil from the cannons she is blasted backwards, preventing that from working. I personally think that taking a tactic that was safe and effective against a very similar looking attack and turning it into guaranteed way to die instantly is a really, really mean beginner's trap. That just always bothered me. Anyways, after some more swinging of weapons, Zan will eventually go to the left side of the screen and start firing out electric balls. Already being in the left corner means you get to be safe from both sisters while getting a good amount of time to attack. Oh boy, here comes the other difficulty spike of this fight. Francisca will do her icicle attack, freezing significant portions of the ground. This is no problem, as you can just stay in the left corner. What is a problem is that this is immediately followed up by Flamberge's sword pogo attack. May Void Termina have mercy on your soul if your ability doesn't have a good invincibility move, as being in the corner with almost no room to dodge against this attack is horrifying. A well-timed spot dodge can bail you out, but her stab can't be blocked, so the stakes are high. After a little bit of time, the ice will dissipate and the attack becomes easy to dodge, but this particular combo of attacks is brutal. Flamberge will do her big cannon attack again, but will flip to the other side if you get behind her. Once she starts firing, being behind her is safe, this time. This will be followed up by a super attack from Zan that will make like 90% of the screen uninhabitable. You know where is safe though? I'm sure you do. The corner! Francisca will then pretend to participate by doing her soda gun, but it doesn't actually hit you in the corner that you're already forced into by the attack that was just being done, so it doesn't matter at all. Then Flamberge actually does participate by suddenly moving to the corner while you're distracted. This fight has a few particularly difficult or stressful attacks to dodge, but for the most part, it's just a war of attrition. They can't hit you very well, you probably can't hit them very well, and they have a lot of health, so just try to avoid as many dumb stray hits as you can until they eventually go down. Morpho Knight EX is easily the hardest fight on average in Soul Melter EX, and by extension the whole game. He is, by most metrics, a significantly harder version of the Meta Knight fight. He is small and thus hard to hit, he will block most of your attacks if you hit him when he isn't attacking, moves around quickly and unpredictably, his attacks have huge hitboxes with huge damage, and worst of all, his attack patterns and movements are very random, making it potentially a huge threat at any moment and giving you few free opportunities to hit him. Abilities with bad range or unsafe attacks are heavily punished by this guy, as being up in his face is a death sentence. He also has very high health, so any ability that doesn't get many opportunities to safely hit him has to survive his onslaught of nonsense for an extra long time. Just like Meta Knight, Morpho Knight will select from a bunch of different moves he can use for most of the fight. He also has some of Meta Knight's properties, like blocking and clanking with sword attacks. Unlike Meta Knight, Morpho Knight can also teleport to move around, and he leaves behind a hitbox as he does, which can trip up short-range abilities. This teleportation also makes him harder to hit in general, as after he finishes a laggy, otherwise punishable move, he is liable to just not be there anymore. Many of his moves are practically identical to Meta Knight's, except they are stronger and much bigger. Morpho Knight can, in addition to repositioning to stay close to you, jump up and fire 3 huge projectiles at you with great coverage, and he will sometimes teleport a short distance away and repeat this in the opposite direction. Jump up and try to hit you with a downward stab. Jump up and glide at you with his sword extended. Wind up and slash 3 times, which fires 3 big homing projectiles. Jump up and do a spinning slash, and he really likes to do this one if you try to camp in the air. Suddenly dash at you and slash. Do a 4-hit slash combo. Do a rapid jab that ends in a finisher that sends out a big homing projectile. Charge up and slide very far forwards with a rising flash to try and final smash you. He will teleport and do this in the opposite direction if you get behind him during the charge up. And prepare a counter, where he will either respond with a big circular sound wave or a slash that leads into his final smash. At certain times in the fight, he will retreat to the corner and summon in a bunch of dark face projectiles. That doesn't sound right. Which move across the battlefield slowly, depriving you of space to dodge him. A lot of bosses have unique attacks buried deep into their attack patterns that you probably never see unless you're intentionally stalling, but this guy is so threatening that some particularly bad abilities might have to deal with them. In Phase 1, if you take a particularly long time, he will eventually jump up, charge up, and do a big sound wave attack. You can also move to the side of the screen and spawn in an unblockable tornado that moves across the screen. I died to this as Yo-Yo, because this tornado attack works completely differently from a similar-looking tornado attack used in Phase 2, and it completely caught me off guard. After Phase 1 comes Phase 2, where he will teleport to the middle of the screen, watch for the teleportation hitbox, and take out 2 unreasonably large swords. He will teleport to the left and do a huge overhead sword swing to the right that does massive damage. Directly underneath him is safe and is a good place to hide while dealing damage to him. Too bad he also has the sucky vortex thing pulling you away from him and towards the sword slash range. Bummer. You can outrun it, but dodging the swords is a bit stressful for sure. He will then teleport to the right and slash to the left, and then to the middle, where he will slash to both sides. This attack is huge, threatening, and highly damaging, but is also the exact same every time, so it is one of the easier parts of the fight with practice. After this, he will go back to normal, for like 5 seconds, before going right into another super attack. A lot of show off. He will start teleporting around, doing huge sound wave attacks wherever he appears. He moves around too much and has too much range for these to be avoided the conventional way. The well-timed spot dodges and or invincibility moves work well against his pretty predictable phase. The sword and soundwave attacks being back-to-back gives you a decently long amount of time to hit him with less, but not no, resistance, so the fight tends to speed up a lot here. From here, he'll go back to using his regular moveset while sprinkling in special moves at certain times, like the Evil Faces attack, and I think that sounds better. He can use the Tornado attack from Phase 1, except this time the Tornadoes go into the background, then move through the playing field into the screen. This is why the one in Phase 1 tripped me up so bad. I didn't expect the Tornado to just keep going forwards. This attack is pretty straightforward to dodge, but don't forget the Tornadoes can't be blocked, dodged, or invincibility through in any way. Additionally, though the Tornadoes go into the background, he spawns them directly in front of himself, so being too close can lead to you immediately getting punished. After dawdling around for enough time, his attack pattern will loop, having him do the big sword and soundwave attacks again, giving you more safe-ish opportunities to hit him, helping you end the fight faster. This guy is Meta Knight, but stronger in almost every way. Tankier, more evasive, bigger and stronger attacks, and he doesn't just roll over and die in Phase 2.
And I can't get up!
Almost every ability has a harder time with Morpho Knight compared to Meta Knight, with a few interesting exceptions. Meta Knight will have portions of the fight with 2 independently moving and attacking threats, so abilities with high end lag and mobility on their attacks, like Wing, will be hard-pressed to safely do anything without being caught by the other Knight. Morpho Knight, as quick as he may be, is always just one guy, so you can reliably track him and dash attack around with relative impunity. Void Termina. Oh boy. Oh, there's a lot to say about Void Termina. Void Termina's first phase is fought in 3D using the Star Allies Sparkler, a starship-type vehicle thing. These 3D sections are almost completely identical between all of the abilities and characters, with the main exception being the element of your shot. Some characters will have a different element or property on their shots, like cleaning firing wind bullets and sword firing sharp bullets. Some elements can nullify some of Void Termina's attacks, but the effect is very minor overall. Because you can't use the unique moveset of whatever character you're playing as, these fights can't be cheesed with overpowered characters. Thankfully, they're no problem if you know the attack pattern. The only time I really take damage during these phases is when I start paying attention to something else and go full autopilot, as doing these sections several dozen times gets very repetitive. In the Star Allies Sparkler, you can only really do 2 things. Shoot and do an invincible spin maneuver, in addition to jumping and double jumping, typical stuff. The spin is good for getting out of tough situations, but you can't fire while using it, so it's best to just get out of the way of attacks as much as possible. You can charge up your attack to fire more powerful shots, and the DPS on these is much higher than spamming the little shots. The right stick can be used to move the camera and change what you're aiming at. In all other variations of this fight, this is pretty much useless, as the game focuses on the boss automatically, and will automatically lock onto his one and only weak point. I said automatically twice there. That did sound very good. In this version of the fight, unlike all other versions, most of his weak points are available all at once. Because of this, the right stick now lets you choose which weak point to lock onto, which adds some strategy. Each weak point has its own health bar, and when you finish one off, Void Termina will stagger and stop doing whatever he was doing. You can get a weak point close to death, leave it and go to work on another one, and when he's in the middle of a threatening attack, switch back and kill the first one to make him stop. Void Termina has 4 weak points available in the first part of the phase, with 1 on each arm, 1 on the front, 1 on the back. The one on the back is the hardest to access, so I always go for it first. In this first section, Void will alternate between pounding the ground with his fist to send out quickly moving energy geysers at you and jumping to spawn shockwaves at either the ground or jump height. These are pretty straightforward to dodge, but make sure to keep a good distance from him, otherwise you won't be able to easily sidestep the geysers. Once all 4 of his weak points are broken, he will reveal the final 5th one on his head. He will then turn his hands to the swords, and it becomes gambling time! He can either imbue his swords with fire, electricity, or ice. He will slash his swords at you, creating big waves of fire, big waves of electricity, or big icicles. The fire and electric attacks are difficult to dodge because the hitboxes on his projectiles are very unclear, and their particle effects are so intense it can be hard to gauge how close they even are to you and how fast they're moving. It isn't impossible to dodge by any stretch, but these attacks are the only attacks he has that stress me out a little. If you are lucky and roll the 1 and 3 to get ice, the attack is much easier to dodge, as the icicles have much more obvious hitboxes and thus are less confusing to work with. The fire projectiles can be dissipated with wind, water, or ice, the electric projectiles can be dissipated with water, and the ice projectiles can be dissipated with fire. Notably, this means that any ability or character with water on its shot basically gets to skip this attack, as they completely eliminate the hard patterns. After the wave attacks, he will do 2 final slashes, sending out 2 slightly homing X-shaped projectiles. As long as you are far enough away and keep moving to the side, these are no problem, and this phase should be just about over. Void Termina's second phase is a brief fight with regular controls. The boss doesn't have that much health, but it floats, moves around, and spawns a lot of independently moving projectiles, so some abilities will have trouble with this guy. Additionally, his harder to dodge attacks are further into his attack pattern, so abilities that kill him slowly have more stuff to worry about. The boss, a floating orb, will shift around and spawn floating rune projectiles in different configurations. These runes can be destroyed by attacking them and spawn from inside of Void, and as a result, abilities with splash damage or really big hitboxes excel against this fight, as they'll nullify these attacks by just regularly dealing damage. The runes can have the following behaviors: homing in on you before eventually floating away, moving to one side of the screen then sweeping across the screen, circling around each other then exploding out radially, and homing in on you while being particularly large and tanky. Additionally, early into the fight, a big red and white rune will be spawned in that will slowly bounce around the arena, reducing the amount of space you have to dodge. If attacked a lot, and I mean a lot, I didn't know this thing could be destroyed for the longest time, it can eventually be destroyed, and will even drop a Maxim Tomato. Whenever the boss is damaged, drops of blood will form from the ceiling at random points and drop to the floor. With all of the projectiles moving around and the unpredictable droplets, this fight can be pretty bothersome for abilities that struggle to hit him. The free full heal really does take most of the stakes away though. Void Termina's third phase is back to the 3D arena, and this time he takes to the skies. He has some attacks that are more intimidating looking and damaging than the first 3D phase, but I would argue they're easier to dodge. It is also easier to keep him from attacking much at all by staggering the destruction of his weak points, so I find this phase to be notably easier than the already not that bad first phase. The layout of weak points is the same as in the first phase, but because he flies at a far distance from you and usually turns to face you, the back weak point can only be hit during certain situations. He will open up by spawning 2 bows at each side and firing them, creating a line of fire or ice projectiles. This can easily be dodged by just moving to the side. He will then swoop towards you, and jumping over this will activate slow motion that gives you plenty of time to attack the back weak point. Void Termina will take out an axe, swoop behind you, and slam the ground multiple times, creating shockwaves and geysers. The geysers move very fast and can be tricky to avoid, so this might be a good time to use the invincibility spin. You have a brief period where you can hit his back while he's moving behind you. After this, he will rise high into the air, force the camera to a top-down perspective that leaves you unable to target him, and rain down arrows that create big electric explosions and shockwaves. You can't attack him during this attack, so there's no downside to spinning anymore. Go nuts. In the first phase, tactically destroying his weak points at certain times to cancel some of his attacks was, at most, pretty convenient. In this phase, he's so vulnerable to this strategy that it's sad.
Sorry! Denied!
By leaving a few weak points at very low health, you could not only punish the long stride-up animation of the axe attack by canceling before it starts, but also totally prevent the top-down arrow attack from happening if you stagger him before he gets to start it. After the top-down attack does or doesn't happen, he will swoop towards you again. It's optimal to not break a weak point after the top-down attack, as the swoop is an extremely easy-to-dodge attack that gives you lots of free time to hit him. He'll try to do the arrow attack and the axe attack again, but if you played your cards right, he'll be out of weak points after only doing a few easy-to-dodge attacks. He is such a sad sack. Did the developers intend for the attack-canceling strategy? Did they know about how easy he is to stagger? For a final boss, he feels really helpless. He will now enter his final phase, and this last weak point on his head has a particularly high amount of health. He will fire an intimidating spread of lasers that aren't actually that intimidating if you know how to dodge them. He will fire out a spread of 6 lasers that can be dodged by moving diagonally back. He will fire a bunch of lasers that slightly track you that can be dodged by continuously moving to the side. Finally, he will fire a single enormous, highly damaging, long-lasting laser a couple times. The laser moves at the same speed as you, and can also be dodged by continuously moving to the opposite side. These attacks are horrifying the first time you see them, but are glorified cutscenes when you know what directions to hold. The only concern is arena space. You fight this boss on a circular platform, so moving to one direction for too long will eventually have you hit an edge. Because of this, you should try to get as close to the center as possible before this phase starts, in between laser barrages to ensure you don't run out of space to dodge and die. The very low angle of the camera makes it hard to see where exactly you are in the arena, so I'd recommend jumping to get a better sense of where you are. The true final boss of the game, Void, is simultaneously pretty tricky and not much of a problem at all. Void floats, so some abilities have a hard time hitting him. He also has a pretty chaotic attack pattern, with some of his attacks being unblockable. Despite this, Void is extremely predictable, so he's definitely one of the better bosses to have a shaky matchup against. Void will gain significant amounts of damage reduction throughout the fight, and will give you a very long time to hit him during one of his later attacks. This makes it so that most abilities finish off Void at around the same time, regardless of whether they're particularly good or bad against him. Because of this, I like to think of this fight as a glorified cutscene. Fun fact, throwing friend hearts at Void damages him. They don't do very much damage, but this kind of technically gives normal a projectile I can use. I think the hearts hurting him is more of a lore hint than a real gameplay mechanic. Your hearts deal 0 damage to literally every other enemy and boss in the entire game, but it's super neat that it's here, I like it. Void will open up with a bullet hell attack. This attack looks chaotic and horrifying, but if you stick to the left corner, only 2 projectiles will be able to hit you. Spot dodge those and you're in the clear. Void will then follow up with a bunch of unblockable lasers in all directions. Stay in the left corner to avoid the first 2 volleys, and move a little bit forwards to avoid the third set. He'll do a quad cutter attack, which can be avoided by hiding in the corner like a little baby. You know, the regular strategy. He will go into the background and slam back into the playing field, hitting either spots 1 and 3 or spots 2 and 4, then vice versa. This is, as far as I can tell, one of the few attacks that isn't totally predetermined, but whichever pattern he does first, you can react and jump between them to dodge both him and his landing shockwaves. Void will then split into 4, move to the top of the screen, and each of his copies will stick out needles in 8 directions, filling the screen with hitboxes. There are a few blind spots in the needles, and I like to hover a little bit above the ground in the middle of the screen. They will then move downward and repeat the attack, except at ground level this time. I like to use the blank spot in the middle of the screen at about 3/4 screen height if I need to dodge this attack, but I usually prefer to use this opportunity to get in some good damage. During this attack, the boss presents you with several easily damageable hitboxes, so I like to just tank the hit and beat the stuffing out of him. Void bounces all around the arena and fills the room with some water to make navigation more awkward. He'll then bounce to the left, the right, the middle, and then swoop towards the screen in the middle. This attack, alongside the opening attack, is a great example of how predetermined Void is. His attacks and movements seem to be unpredictable and random, but he will always bounce in the exact same pattern, so he's very exploitable. The water will then recede, so long only water in all of Soul Melter EX, and Void will do the quad cutter attack again. Void will now do his Dark Mind attack. He will grow large and enter the background, then move down to the ground while spinning mirrors around himself. Running alongside him is safe, and you can hit him while he's in the background. He will then rise to the top of the screen, now in the foreground, so don't touch him, and fire lasers which will bounce across the screen. They can either go around the screen rectangularly or go diagonally across the screen. This is probably the most unpredictable part of the fight, made more uncomfortable by the fact that lasers are unblockable. There are blind spots where the lasers can't go, though, so hovering anywhere that isn't along the edges of the screen or along a diagonal of the screen is safe. Void will go into the background and turn into a fireball. He will sweep along the screen in the following pattern. Top of the screen going left to right, bottom of the screen going right to left, starting top left, moving bottom right, starting top right, moving bottom left, and starting top left going into the middle of the screen. He moves fast enough to the point where rolling through him was a safe option. A dumb little tangent. The stars that Void spawns are, like, kind of fake? I've never seen anyone talk about this. I don't know what's going on here. Normal can inhale them, but as far as I can tell, nothing else can interact with them, which is very strange, seeing as plenty of abilities and characters have the ability to interact with drop stars. Weird. Anyways, after this is Void's de facto kill screen, Laser Phase. He'll move to a side of the screen, it's random which, but it doesn't really matter, and spawn in 3 huge lasers, forcing you up. He will then spawn in 3 huge lasers at the top, forcing you quickly to go down right as the first set of lasers despawns. Void will, for the remaining set of lasers, float in the middle of the screen, far enough in the background where he can't deal contact damage, but close enough to where you can hit him. These next attacks will give you so much time to safely hit him that he practically always dies right here. He'll spawn a big laser along the top, middle, and bottom that will sweep towards the screen in that order. He will spawn 4 big lasers at the top of the screen that will sweep downwards, conveniently, directly beneath Void is safe. As the final attack of the laser phase, he will spawn a ton of lasers everywhere. Directly underneath Void is safe, but floating directly in front of him is recommended. Void will then do a reprise of the Dark Mind attack, with him going to the background and moving mirrors around himself, or moving from the top middle of the screen to the bottom middle. He will then do more bouncing lasers, but at this point, he's given you so much time to hit him and his damage resistance is worn up, so he should be very dead now. Void's arsenal of huge, highly damaging, unblockable attacks, his erratic movements, and the fact that he floats, severely worsening the DPS of many copy abilities, would seem to make him a formidable foe. In the end, though, he's just so dang predictable and scripted, especially with a stupidly overbearing damage resistance, that the best abilities and worst abilities end up faring pretty similarly, at least in terms of completion time.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no.
I consider Morpho Knight to be the real final boss of Soul Melter EX, because after him, everything else is pretty much in the bag. I even think that the first inside phase is harder than this phase. At least that has some considerable randomness to it that could potentially pose a threat. I love Soul Melter EX. My favorite thing about this game was the wide array of abilities and characters on offer, and Soul Melter gives each and every one of them a chance to show their stuff and demonstrate how they differ from one another. It also gives me an excuse to play this game for even longer. The story mode of Star Allies is so easy that you can do whatever you want to get away with it, not that there's anything inherently wrong with that, but Soul Melter gives you a challenge hard enough to be satisfying while giving a good metric for measuring the strength of each ability. It can be really easy if you want it to be by just picking a broken character, or it can be a genuinely difficult test of knowledge and skill if you handicap yourself with a weak ability. Looking at you, artist.
Life is pain! I hate my...
I really wish other Kirby games would record completion for each ability in their arenas, as that would encourage experimentation, would help people find their favorite ability, instead of just doing it with the safest, campiest ability, or, hammer. Would I recommend you play Soul Melter EX? Obviously. Would I recommend you play Soul Melter EX with all abilities like I did? I mean, yeah, I really like this game, but only if you're willing to accept a pretty decent grind. So go out there and beat the soul melting heat. But just remember my one final piece of advice. Don't pick Yo-Yo. Seriously, I like Yo-Yo and all, but why is it this week? Who looked at these damage numbers and thought it was okay? Please buff Yo-Yo in Star Allies 2.